You'd be surprised what comes up in conversation when paleontologists spend long days in the field. Some of it's deep time in ancient ecosystems. Some of it is, well, trying to remember our fourth favorite hat. This is Fourth Favorite Hat, a look into real dig site chatter of the Montana Dinosaur Center. Each episode brings you the work, the stories, the arguments, the questions, and the odd tangents that emerge when you put scientists, shovels, fossils, and too much sun in the same place. And yes, every guest still has to answer the only question that really matters. What's your fourth favorite hat? Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Andy, and my fourth favorite hat is my South Dakota Badlands dad cap.
I'm Bret, and my fourth favorite hat is my Lake Champlain Lake Monsters baseball cap.
I'm Bryce, and my fourth favorite hat is my wide-brimmed Denver Zoo hat.
And continuing with our mini-series of Meet the Coat. Oh, Jesus. Already screwed up. Meet the hosts. We are going to be talking about Bret because we are doing alphabetical order. So, Big B, what can you tell us about your journey in paleontology? What got you started? How do you pursue it? What's your specialties? All those sorts of things.
Yeah, so, like everyone else the rest of us here, I started paleontology, my interest in paleontology at a young age. I think that's pretty typical among most paleontologists.
Yeah.
So specifically, though, when I was like 4 years old, I started collecting rock, kind of how I got into geology and paleontology. My mom has always worked in museums. She was curator for a bunch of different museums doing Native American basketry. As a kid, I would always hear about like mom's going to be at her museum or whatever. They would always say like her museum. Of course, she didn't run the museum, but she worked there. So when I was a little kid, I was like, well, when am I going to get my own museum? And I asked my parents that. It was kind of like, natural. So, everyone will have their own museum at some point, I guess.
You hear about like family careers, like, oh, I come from a long line of shoemakers. Cobblers is the word. I almost said shoesmiths. Oh, I come from a long line of such and such. You don't hear it about museum work a lot.
No, but I just kind of thought that like at some point I was just like bound to get my own museum. So I was like 4 years old and I was asking about that. And my mom says, well, if you had a museum, what type of museum would you have? And I was like, well, rocks. I'd have a rock museum. So my mom was like, well, how about this? Like we can go out in the backyard today and you can pick some rocks out and we can set up a rock museum in like your room. And I was very excited about this. So I went like all over my backyard, all over like the neighborhood and got like coolest rocks I could find. And that's kind of how I got my start in rock collecting and with my rock museum. And from there it kind of grew. So whenever like we'd go on trips anywhere, whenever people like my mom would tell people about this or other people would hear about it, like whenever family friends would go on trips, they would always get rocks and bring them back to me. So I have rocks from a bunch of places all over the world that I've never been to that people would go and they would be like, oh, well, if I'm there, I'll grab a little rock for Bret. They kind of thought it was very funny, cute. So I actually have my rock museum kind of grew. So in my room now, I have like a cabinet full of like rocks, fossils from kind of all over the world. They all have some labels saying where they're from. It's not very professional, but it's cool. Definitely a good museum worth visiting if you're ever at my house.
You know what? I'll take you up on that. It sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how I got started on like the geology side. On the paleontology side, as a kid, we talked about this a little bit when we talked about books. Every night, my dad we'd read books like before I went to sleep. And the one he had was like a Golden Naturalis book of like natural history. And it was like a natural history book, probably from like the 60s, but had, all kinds of different ancient life in it. And every day, we'd read like a chapter. And then like once we got to the end, I would like want to read that again. The other book we would read a lot would be the D&D monster manual.
That explains a lot.
So those are the kind of books we read. That's how I got super interested in like ancient life in general. I always liked dinosaurs, of course, but I also liked all kinds of other stuff. My dad's favorite thing was always the Eriops, so that's one of my favorites as well. It's a little bit before dinosaurs. If you guys don't know, it's kind of like a big amphibian, crocodilian-esque thing from the Permian. Kind of a cool
Eriops
animal.
is one I would say is a top tier Permian fella.
Yeah, it's definitely a little different than most people's like favorite like prehistoric animal.
But
Yeah.
like, I don't know, if I were to describe like Permian tetrapods, maybe this is purely because we're so suffused with paleontology, but I feel like Eriops is like, yeah, it's got all the marks. It is the Permian tetrapod.
Yeah, it's big, it's cool, big predator.
4 legs.
That was always like another favorite of mine. Well, that's kind of how I got started in paleontology and geology as an interest. And then, I mean, it kind of throughout my whole life was something I was always into. Like when I was a kid, they'd always be like, "Oh, what do you want to do when you grow up?" I mean, it would always be paleontologist and everything.
Mhm.
Sometimes for like school or whatever, it's like, what do you want to be? Paleontologist. When I was in Scouts, by the way, for anyone wondering. Boy Scouts. One of the merit badges, I forget which one. We had to talk to like figure out like what do you want to do when you grow up, and like you have to interview somebody. So I was telling my mom about that, and she was like, "Well, one of the people I know is like a paleontologist. I could like send him an email and see if he'd be interested in talking to you." That was back when I was probably like 13 or 14. I actually ended up talking with Eric Scott. He's a paleontologist who specializes in fossil horses,
Hmm.
and he went to college with my mom. He was a few years younger than my mom, but they were in like a few clubs together or something. My mom's a very friendly person. She makes friends with everyone. So she was like, "Hey, would you be interested in like answering a few questions for him?" So that was my first time in the way I actually talked to like a real professional paleontologist about it. And he kind of gave me some advice
I mean, yeah,
about,
like I feel like that was always such a benefit for the short time when I was in Boy Scouts is just the connection ability.
yeah, it's like so many unique experience. Well,
Yeah. And now as somebody who is technically an adult, being able to make that impact for a kid, it really comes full circle. Like have you ever felt that?
yeah, like nowadays, like if somebody was like in scouts and they wanted to talk to a paleontologist and like reach out to me, I'd be happy to answer questions. Like, gotta like, pass the torch forward now.
For sure. Whenever I'm like volunteering at the Denver Museum, and every once in a while they have like various events, and some of those are just like Girls in Science or various other like children-based events where they just kind of come behind the scenes and ask questions about what we're doing. That's always a fun time.
I think it's also very important.
I don't want to say it's our duty because that makes it sound way more serious than it is, but I feel like we have an obligation to do it.
We have an obligation. It's not like a bad thing. It's something we enjoy.
Something I think about a lot. I was talking with one of the guest speakers during my master's program, and she was talking about how she taught high schoolers in paleontology and was like, Andy, I think my high schoolers would love you. You know, you're a paleontologist who loves sea shanties. And I just kind of had to stop her and be like, that is the exact reason why high schoolers did not love me when I was in high school. So being able to kind of provide that, hey, kids, it's okay. I turned out fine.
It's kind of hard to find a paleontologist to talk to, like if you don't know like much about it, right? If this is something you're interested in,
Mm.
it can be hard to do to actually, get that experience. Being able to offer that, I think, is really, really
Yeah.
good.
And
It's one of the
my,
strengths I think of our museum and like the
yeah,
whole dig programs is you can just go out with for a day with several paleontologists and ask them whatever questions you want about field, about getting into it.
my friends just recently had an experience of me interacting with another person in the geosciences, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't just an Andy thing. They're just like that." And I'm like, "Why are you acting like this is weird?" I see geologists all the time, and they're like, "You might, but we don't." And I guess it kind of gets lost on me how uncommon we might be.
Yeah, that's true
Yeah.
for sure.
There definitely aren't a whole lot of paleontologists out there. You don't exactly just kind of run into them every day.
But
I mean,
like,
one thing we say is there's only like 1 degree of separation between paleontologists in like the whole country. It's like if you don't know them, you know somebody who knows them.
yeah,
It's not a
we
big
move in
field.
herds. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah.
So I feel like it kind of gets lost on me. I'm like, of course paleontologists are common. There's three of them in this call right now.
Yeah.
But when you're doing your paleo stuff, you mentioned a love of geology. So do you take more so a geologic approach to it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you'll hear more about like paleobiology from Bryce, next week, but that's what he does. But I do definitely the geology side. So that's more looking at the actual rocks around the bones, looking at the fossilization process and looking at what can we tell about the environments by looking at the rocks. The rocks do a lot of basically storytelling about previous environment. It's a little bit different from taphonomy, which Andy talked about, which is more about how the bones came to be there. The geology is more looking at the environment around the dinosaurs when they died, what the ancient environment was like, reconstructing all of that. A little bit different.
Yeah. And of course, paleo being a massive hybrid science, there's always going to
Oh,
be
there's all overlap
overlap.
between all of it.
Yeah, there's
Like you,
none of these are operating in a vacuum.
yeah, there's never a time when we have like completely no idea about something else. Like just because Bryce doesn't do geology, for example, doesn't mean he's clueless about like what this rock is.
Well,
Um,
he usually is, but for different reasons. The reason
It's
being,
true.
I threw the rock at his head and he's slightly dazed.
It's true. He discombobulates me regularly.
Well, Bryce, I'm just helping your evolution. Eventually, you'll evolve to be able to dodge it.
That's true. You know what they say, if you can dodge a rock, you can identify complex paleo-environmental systems.
They're always saying that.
wow. See, he's already picking up on the lingo.
Yeah, in fact, that's
You can-
that's what my back tattoo says. I guess that sort of then brings up you were talking about when do you get your own museum, and I would like to say, I always call the Montana Dinosaur Center, I'm like, oh, my museum or our museum. I,
I
I
would
hope you're
definitely,
seeing it as sort of your own place, yeah?
yeah, I would agree with that for sure. We've really kind of done a lot of overhauling of the museum over the past few years. It's not just like the three of us, but like everyone involved.
Oh, of course. I'm not
Yeah,
excluding
just
them.
just wanted to let everyone else know, of course.
Yeah.
The three of us are not taking all the credit.
No,
But we've
sorry,
the
that
museum has
was
really started to move forward, making a lot of good changes, I think, over the past few years. We've done a lot of modernization, both inside of our museum and online social media, through that whole aspect. And
Not all of them have been good changes, though. Like, we made a podcast. Oh,
but
Yeah.
we're
Well, they
doing
can't
our
all be
best
winners.
to, you know, to make the museum better. And I think as we do that, a lot of work, it gives us a good feeling of ownership that we're helping to improve it. At least that's how I feel. I think you guys feel the same way.
yeah.
Yeah.
I bring it up because I have a tendency to, I don't know if personify is the right word, but when I was talking about my fish or my mosasaurs, I don't own those, but like we have a connection. It's like when I
Yeah,
say my friends, you know?
I agree.
The museum is a big friend that we work in, I guess.
We do our best to take care of and
Mhm.
bring into the future.
Hmm.
Bryce, do you have any questions for Brett?
Well, I was still kind of wondering because you mentioned you have all these rocks in your little home museum. What's your favorite specimen? What's like the big tension grabber in your
All right.
museum?
Favorite specimen? It might not be like the big attention grabber, to be honest, but my favorite specimen is actually a rock that came from Antarctica.
Ooh,
Ooh.
Yeah, not something you see often. Like,
no, that's rare.
yeah, I do have a rock from every continent on display in my museum, and I have a little, a little like pebble that was collected in Antarctica. My uncle went to Antarctica
Like, just
in,
casually on a trip or what?
well, yeah, he was kind of on a trip, not really casually, I guess. I don't think you
Mhm.
casually go to Antarctica.
Well, that was the joke.
Yeah, he was there for a trip, and he ended up collecting a rock from there and sent to me. Yeah, he was always traveling everywhere, so he would always get rocks from, all over. He had a big thing where he would want to go and see different eclipses, like total
Mhm.
eclipses wherever they were in the world. So he would travel all over the world to see them.
So, kind of building off of the specimens,
Yeah,
something I always love when I'm able to is seeing what specimen for any museum collection is labeled 001, the first thing they collect. So, what's your 001?
I don't have them labeled like that in order of date. I mean, they might have some of them might have date collected, but as I said, that first day,
You mean
I
that
went out into my
4-year-old Brett
backyard.
wasn't ready
Yeah.
for this question?
I mean, honestly, my mom might have labeled it because she was a museum person. She was helping me. There might actually be one labeled as my first rock collected, but it definitely came from my backyard that very day. Probably within like a few minutes. Like I went outside to like find the coolest rock I could find,
Yeah.
to start my collection in my museum.
There's a rock that's in my parents' front yard. Growing up, when I was really little, I was convinced it was a T-Rex skull. And it's super not. It's just a large piece of pumice. But man, I went on about that one for a while.
I was
That's
always hoping
fair.
to find dinosaurs in our backyard as well. Like I
Uh,
would like dig pits and stuff, but like I never found any fossils.
I think for me it was more sand, but I remember I found this big kind of like grayish black river stone almost that looked vaguely egg-shaped, so I decided that was a Stegosaurus egg.
I think any kid who's into dinosaurs will have like an object like that, you know?
Uh, when all you
Yeah.
have is a hammer, the world looks like a nail.
Yeah, exactly.
When all you have is a love of dinosaurs, you see them everywhere.
So of course nowadays my museum does have some fossils in it. Nothing like too spectacular, of course. Mostly like smaller fragments or like shells or things. I don't think I have any dinosaur material there though.
Do you think we can do a sister museum program with the Montana Dinosaur Center and the Bret Museum? What's your museum called?
Bret's Rock Museum.
Yeah, should we become sister museums?
I'm not
I-
sure what that entails, but maybe that could be.
Is the official like museum abbreviation of your museum like the BRM then, or does it have a different
Yeah,
abbreviation?
I think it would be
Okay.
BRM. Yeah,
Yeah, the Brim.
Bret's Rock Museum. And I was gonna say, I have some cool rocks there. Like definitely some pieces, worthy of being in a bigger museum.
Yeah, look, get the paperwork filled out, become a nonprofit, all that stuff, and then we can be sister museums.
Seems like a thing we got to do.
The next logical step.
It's the only thing that makes sense. I do think, all jokes aside, that sort of stuff is a crucial first step to nursing a lifelong passion of science.
Yeah,
Yeah, it really is.
I didn't give up on it. Like I collected rocks, all throughout my life. Like it's not something that was just like a phase as I was a kid. It's
Mhm.
never something I grew out of.
Having met your mom, that checks out for her style of teaching.
Getting involved. It was definitely a fun thing to do as a kid, and I mean, it helped
Oh,
keep me
yeah.
into it.
Something like that, pulling that off is really cool. And honestly, our mission as the Montana Dinosaur Center kind of lines up with that of citizen science.
Yeah, I think we do a really good job of actually getting the people involved, kind of all ages and interest levels in the museum. Like people who are casually into stuff, people who are super into it. I think everyone can come and, take a lot away.
Certainly.
And just because it's another fun question to ask, and I asked Andy last time, Brett, if you were to get involved in a different part of paleontology, which one would you do?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'm not entirely sure. I do like rocks a lot, so it's tough to say to do something else, but there's a lot of stuff with rocks that are kind of less involved. Like I would definitely say maybe like paleoclimatology.
I mean, yeah.
That's kind of based in rocks as well, like sediment cores, things like that. But it's super interesting to me. Like I always took when I took paleoclimatology in college, it was maybe my favorite class I took. It was a lot of fun. I think it's also one of the most important fields of paleontology. I mean, you guys probably have been asked this a bunch. It's like, oh, why does any of the stuff even matter that you're doing?
Mhm.
I'm sure you guys get that asked that a lot. People ask me that sometimes.
What?
Um,
Never.
yeah. People will be like, oh, so why does any of the stuff you're working on even matter? I mean, the paleoclimatology is a big tie-in, looking at climate change over time, comparing it to today.
The
It's
past and the present
very
are the keys
important.
to the future.
Yeah, we can always look at climate change in the past versus climate change today, and we can see that we are, headed in a bad way, and stuff needs to be done about this.
And
Paleoclimatology is for sure what I think I would do.
for listeners, the kind of geology that Brett and I specialize in is called sedimentology, the sedimentary
Yes.
rocks. Also known as soft rock geology because the rocks are typically softer. Metamorphic and igneous stuff is called hard rock geology. So my question is, Brett, would you ever consider going into hard rock geology?
I mean, of course I'd consider it. I mean, there's
Mhm.
definitely interesting stuff in there. I enjoy hydrology a lot as well. I mean, that's a mix of both
What's
hard and soft
hydrology
rock
for the
geology.
listeners?
Hydrology is basically the study of groundwater, how water interacts underground, how it moves, how aquifers recharge, looking at groundwater pollution. It's pretty important especially in the West, where we are. There's a lot of pressure on groundwater for farming, agriculture.
Oh yeah.
I'm from California, so it's a really big deal out there.
So a fact I love to give about hydrology that kind of can, I guess, ruffle people's feathers. Water, depending on if it's above ground or underground, is either lava or magma. Because lava is above ground molten minerals. Magma is subterranean molten minerals. Ice, the solid form of water, is a mineral.
Yeah, it's true. I love to telling people that ice is like my favorite mineral.
Hmm. And then they get mad at you,
They
and
get
it's
they get
like,
super upset at me, and it's like, well, it's true. I mean, I drink water with ice every day.
yeah, I love then when people are like, okay, you're technically correct. I'm like, why are you like, I'm correct. You don't have to put the technically in it. I
Yeah,
use the definitions of the words.
a mineral you have to have a fixed chemical structure. So like, ice has a fixed chemical structure. So,
H2O.
yeah,
It's naturally occurring, it's got a crystalline
crystalline
structure.
structure.
So,
So it meets all the definitions. It's a mineral.
and then lava is comprised of molten minerals. Well, so's water. I remember asking my geology professor that in freshman year if water counted, and he just kind of looked at me and said, "I guess, but I hate it." It was fun though. Like he was a good sport about it. He was the professor I had where when he was teaching us about plate tectonics, he was like, "When I was your guys' age, this was brought up as a fringe hypothesis."
Yeah, I mean, it really wasn't in textbooks until like the 1980s.
Yeah, no, which is just a wild
That's crazy
perspective
to
to
me.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like the history of geology is super interesting to me. I'm somebody who likes history, so I'm a little biased, but the
All right,
history of geology is super interesting.
top five favorite things about geologic history or history of
Okay.
geology.
History of geology or geologic history, because those are two different subjects.
Yes, dealer's choice.
I think, well, since we're talking about history, we'll talk about the history of geology. I think I mean, there's a lot to go through. I think
Yeah,
the kind of
that's
the whole
fair.
discussion, I was gonna say, kind of a broad topic. I don't know if I'll do five, but just mention a few things that are super interesting.
Mhm.
One thing we talked about was, continental drift. The whole
Yeah.
story of Alfred Wegener and kind of how he figured out continental drift is super interesting. He was a meteorologist and he was looking at fossils from, well, first off, he looked at a map and was kind of like, something you guys can do if you look at a map today you can see like, wow, it really looks like South America and Africa could like fit together almost. He was like, wow, this really looks like they fit together. I mean, like lots of people have that, can look at the map and make the same conclusion. And he was like, I wonder if they used to be together. So he kind of started thinking about how could I tell if that's happening?
Yeah.
And
No.
he decided to look at fossils.
Mhm. He
So he
goes
looked it
about
up
it a
in a
great
very
way.
scientific way.
I just love that he brings it up. First ever written record of it is in a love letter. He's like telling his fiance, "Doesn't it look like South America and Africa could fit together?"
Yeah.
You know what?
And
God
then
bless him.
yeah, so he went and looked at a bunch of fossils and he found out that there's a bunch of fossils from, I think specifically he was looking at Permian-based fossils. Maybe I'm
Mhm.
wrong. Maybe it's earlier.
Mesosaurus.
Yeah, that's Permian,
Not
right? Yeah,
Mesosaurus, I believe, is Permian, if not
Permian.
Triassic.
Think so?
It was something like it's either late Permian or early
Um,
Triassic.
let's see. Mesosaurus
And he
is
looked
a
at
early Permian.
okay, early Permian.
Editor Andy coming at you from the future. I just wanted to clarify, since I realized we never really mentioned what a Mesosaurus is. They were relatives of reptiles. They're in reptilia, but not part of the modern-day surviving reptiles, which is Eureptilia. They are parareptilia. And they were animals that had adapted for swimming. All right, back to the past.
I know like Listopteris is like another one. It's like a plant.
Mhm.
But he looked at a bunch of fossils and saw that like these fossils are found across Australia, India, South America, and Africa. And it was like, how could all of these animals that could not cross these vast oceans have been all, next within the same range? So it's like they must have been together at some point. So of course he presented these findings, and like at the time, all the geologists were like, "Wow, this guy is an idiot. He's a climatologist. Why is he even doing geology? This guy is a fool, basically." And he didn't really ended up getting validated for, a few decades until World War II. A lot of it became known because of they were doing a lot of mapping of the ocean with sonar, and they ended up finding about like the continental ridges where the plates are actually expanding.
Mhm.
And then some geologists went through and were like, wait, he was onto something.
Now, with your love of history, you might like this fact. Where I went to school for undergrad, Beloit College in Beloit, Wisconsin, the local graveyard actually has two famous geologists in it. I'm using famous in air quotes because relative. There is T.C. Chamberlain, who I've just now learned that his middle name is Crowder, but I first read it as Chowder. So that's something I have to rectify. Anyways, he's one of the guys that founded the Journal of Geology, like that scientific body of
Mhm.
literature. And then Roy Chapman Andrews, who's the guy that more or less is Indiana Jones. Yeah, I got to see their graves.
That's super neat.
Yeah, they're both buried in their family plots because they both lived in Beloit.
Makes sense why there's a good geology program there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the history in general is like endlessly interesting to me. I think that's one of the reasons I like geology so much is basically it's just history on a larger scale.
hmm
That's kind of the way I see it. I'm really good at timelines and everything like that. I think because I was so interested in history, geologic time is pretty easy because it's just an extension of that. A lot of people struggle with like geologic time and
I mean, it's
timelines.
something that you kind of have to break your brain a bit to understand at points.
Yeah, I agree.
Kind of telling somebody count to 1 billion. It's a hard number to wrap your brain around. Brett, all of this was great to hear, and I think, well, hopefully the listeners have learned a lot more about you and what sort of motivates your scientific journey. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. And, I'm always happy to answer questions
Yeah. And next week, we'll make Bryce answer questions.
It's my turn.
Yes.
about hadrosaurs.
Yes.
It'll likely come up.
Maybe. I don't know. It's a little bit of a fringe topic for me. I don't really talk about Hadrosaurs all too much.
Yeah. Well, Bryce, thank you for listening to the two geologists talk about how awesome rocks are. You can talk about organisms next episode all you want.
Oh boy. Organism time.
Yeah. I've been Andy,
I'm Bret.
I'll be Bryce next week.
and thank you guys for watching, listening. Dang it.
That's one conversation down, and there's millions more waiting for us out in the ancient dirt. If you want to join the crew on their next auditory adventure, subscribe to the Fourth Favorite Hat, the Montana Dinosaur Center podcast, available wherever podcasts are distributed. You can follow the museum on social media at TM Dinosaur Center, visit tmdinosaurcenter.org, or swing by the museum in Bynum, about 80 minutes north of Great Falls on Highway 89. Thanks for listening.